Hi everyone, today I'm responding to a comment I got from a lovely human asking me to talk a little bit more about pelvic floor, bunions, teeth thinning and gums receding. So without having any more information, just those 4 areas already suggest to me that there might be some involvement going on with the spleen. Now the spleen is charged, or the spleen system as a whole, so that includes the spleen channel and the spleen organ and all of its functions of holding everything in place and digesting and assimilating foods and processing fluid metabolism. So the spleen is charged with the function of holding everything in place. So whenever anyone comes to me with a prolapse or things that are sinking or not in their physiological place, we start to think about spleen. When it comes to bunions, interestingly, through a Japanese acupuncture lens, we actually look at any kind of thickening on that first joint of the toe, on that biggest toe on the foot. We look at that as sugar toes, they call that, because it very often is related to some kind of imbalanced sugar metabolism or an accumulation of what we call dampness, which is inflammation in the body. So again, the spleen comes into play there because the spleen is charged with the digestion and assimilation of food and the distribution of fluids around the body. So wherever we see dampness accumulating, we start to think that potentially there might be some spleen involvement. How can we support the spleen in functioning and firing on all cylinders to move that dampness along? Now, interestingly, the bunions are found on the spleen channel as well. So the spleen channel runs from the inside of the big toe, along the foot, up the inside of the leg, up the thigh, and then ends up here on the side of the rib cage. So it's very obvious from an acupuncture perspective that there's a link between bunions and the spleen by the fact that they're located on the spleen channel itself. Now, the person also mentioned receding gums. So the spleen is in charge of nourishing the flesh and making sure that everything is firm and in place in the same way as that it holds organs in place and prevents prolapse. It also looks after the nourishment and firmness of skin, and that includes gum tissue as well. So whenever the gums start to pull back, they're not well nourished, it tells us that, again, it could be a spleen issue. There could be, for all of these things that we've discussed, there can also be other underlying root causes, but very often it would be spleen, particularly if there's also other things like maybe bloating after meals or sugar cravings, maybe fatigue or like feeling like the body's heavy to move around. There might be repetitive thoughts or worrying or overthinking things. Very often the spleen can get overloaded when we've been studying a lot or when we've been juggling a lot, which is so common for many of us in this day and age, and especially I think parents who juggle looking after the family and working and trying to fit in time to look after themselves as well. It's a lot to juggle at once, and sometimes the spleen cops the aftermath of that. The final point that this person asked about was thinning of teeth, and this is often related to kidney, which can underlie spleen. So not just kidney organs, but the whole kidney system. So the kidney looks after the deep essence of the body, our genetic inheritance, and it rules the teeth and bones. So when we're perhaps not being nourished or when we're running on empty, we will draw into those reserves of minerals that are in the teeth. And I actually had this experience myself in my late 20s. I'd been a vegetarian for almost 20 years and a vegan for the last couple of years, a raw vegan, and it didn't end well for me. And before I revised my diet and started incorporating meat again, my teeth had actually started to go transparent and blotchy because my body was desperately drawing minerals out of any reserve that it could find. So I would be looking at, is your diet nourishing you in the way that you need? And is your spleen, is your digestion able to assimilate and absorb the nutrients that you're putting in? So we might be having an amazing diet, but if we can't absorb and assimilate those nutrients, the body's going to look for reserves deep in the body to rebalance what we're not getting or we're not able to absorb. So circling back to the pelvic floor, some simple things that you can try at home is looking after the warmth of the feet. the spleen channel begins in the feet. So in Chinese medicine, we're big fans of wearing socks and slippers, always keeping that spleen channel warm so it can be active. And as it feeds up the inner leg and through the pelvic floor, it will support and hold that area. Also, just generally looking after the spleen with cooked and warm food and drinks. I have a free ebook to download, so the link is in my bio, and that will talk you through many ways that we can support the spleen. So cooked and warm food and drinks, perhaps journaling or meditating to start to move some of those thoughts out of the mind and calm the mind, rhythmic repetitive movement like walking. So any movement that links moves with breath can be really soothing and calming for the spleen. So definitely keeping the feet warm for a pelvic floor perspective. You can have hot foot baths as well. They're really wonderful. For the bunions, I'd be looking at potentially using moxa. So this is a moxa stick and something like zhengu shui, which is an amazing liniment. So both of these put yang and heat into an area that has yin or dampness accumulated. So definitely be giving something like these a go. For the teeth thinning, I'd also be looking at local remineralizing options. So definitely stopping your fluoride toothpaste or any of the commercial toothpastes if you're using them. There's so many wonderful tooth powder options. I'd be looking also at oil pulling, which is an Ayurvedic tradition where we deeply clean the areas around the teeth, which corrects any pH imbalances and supports the environment there to allow the teeth to remineralize. They absolutely can remineralize. My teeth were so transparent about 15 years ago, and as you can see, they're looking much better these days. I also have some other tips around teeth involving Parmesan and a few other things. So if you're interested in that, let me know. I'll do a little reel. And with the gums receding, it's back to nourishing the spleen. So again, the cooked and warm food and drinks and all of those tips that are in that free ebook. So I hope that's been helpful. If you have any questions relating to this or anything else you'd like me to share in the future, please let me know, and I'd love to hear from you.